Yes, thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining back for the third and one of the most important session of the overall debate that we have been doing. So, before we go towards the discussion and introduce the section as well as the key distinguished experts we have, let me just sort of give you a very quick overview of what we have been discussing since the morning and how this topic that we're going to discuss around the special economic zones, how this has actually become extremely important and how everything is now sort of focusing to or sort of diverging towards converging towards the importance or the significance of the special economic zones. So, and we're very pleased to have been joined by Dr. Arfa. Dr. Arfa, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Hassan Daud, but Ms. Maha, Ms. Hani, I'll be introducing them as we go into the discussion. And we're also very pleased to have with us some of the key stakeholders from China, Dr. Jamal Khan, who's currently at the Institute of International Studies. Also be sort of coming to him with the detailed discussion, and believe we'll shortly be joined by Dr. Ishan Sen, who will be joining us from University of Bath online. So, but before we go into that discussion, so our basic aim today was that we actually wanted to sort of have a discussion on how what role has China played in enabling the energy transition in Pakistan. So we sort of started with having a bit of because again, one of the very important elephants in the room is to sort of understand the diplomatic discussions that are going on, the changing political narratives, political landscapes that have been going on. So how, where do we actually see? I mean, let's also sort of we also sort of had a very detailed discussion on how US imposition of tariffs on China and China's reciprocal tariffs have actually created an environment sort of in which we really need to sort of understand how the new supply chains, how the new trade environment would actually look like. And that's something that's really important. So we actually started with the sort of a plenary session on China Pakistan cooperation for a low carbon future, in which we actually had the former ambassador of Pakistan to China, both Ms. Naghmana Hashmi as well as Mr. Moinul Haq, who sort of deliberated into these discussions along with Mustafa Saab from the Pakistan China Institute, as well as Shah Jahan Mirza Saab, the current managing director of Private Power Infrastructure Board. And this session was headed by Mr. Hamid Sharif, who was the former managing director of AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. So again, one of the very key points that have sort of come out from that debate is that, the importance of Pakistan's industrial growth, how we actually need to address the ongoing issues, how we need to sort of tap in the opportunities that exist, array of opportunities that these special economic zones in Pakistan can sort of bring in. Then we also, one of the very key components that we discussed in the morning was that was around the solar rush. And thanks, Basit is here again, where we sort of discussed that given such an unprecedented solar PV growth of up to 22 gigawatt in just 1.5 years in Pakistan, what opportunities as well as challenges has it brought, and how we actually need to go forward with it? Because again, the focus is so much going now towards the use of away from the utility scale big projects towards more decentralized projects as well. So where does Park China sort of collaboration come in? So even in that panel, we're very pleased to have with us the representatives from Chinese private sector, Professor Dr. Peng from the Guangzhou Institute of Energy, the former CEO and colleagues from some of the Chinese private sector entities, again, not just the one that have been under the G2G arrangement, but also Sky Electric, Longi Solar, who have been taking this, having implemented, because again, when you talk about the solar surge or the solar growth, a lot of it is again happening because of such an important role the Chinese private sector are playing now. Agree on that Pakistan is currently one of the globally recognized success stories on the renewable energy growth. But how is that happening? Definitely, again, a very strong role to be that has been played by China. But even in that session, we actually had not a discussion, but a lot of things pointed out how renewable energy localization, perhaps even you call localization, the shifting of whole supply chains within Pakistan, how that actually could actually expedite the transition that Pakistan is currently going through. And I believe this session, and again, thank you so much for everyone joining us. is again extremely important on renewable energy and special economic zones and industrial growth under the CPEC 2.0, especially as we move forward with the second phase of the CPEC as well. So the way it is structured is that we were again very pleased to have been joined by Dr. Arfa Iqbal, the Executive Director at Board of Investment. She'll be the panel chair for today, and very pleased to have with us Dr. Hassan Daoud, but again, Senior Advisor China Energy China and former Director of CPEC at Planning Commission. And at the same time, Dr. Hassan is working as an associate professor at the Bahria University and holds a number of positions. Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan, for joining us. And along with that, we have Ms. Haniye Saad, Energy Finance Specialist at the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, IFA. Ms. Maha Kamal, she's currently also the co-chair of Women in Energy and also consultant of energy resources and growth at the Oxford Policy Management. Will very shortly be joined by Dr. Ishan Sun, who's currently an associate professor, International Department at University of Bath. So, but before going to that, many of you have been a part of our previous discussions on this around the special economic zones, and many of you know that we have been developing this report in collaboration with the Park China Institute. While we will not be presenting the whole report, but what I'm going to do is take perhaps 7 to 8 minutes to sort of give you an overview of what some of our key recommendations are going towards, and perhaps that can also actually set a basis on which we can sort of take the debate forward as well. So this is actually sort of, and we have already have a lot of discussions bilaterally with you. So all of your inputs that have come are sort of reflected into this. We'll definitely be officially launching it in the next week, and you'll definitely get your formal approvals before this goes any forward. But yeah, I'll just sort of give you a very quick overview of what this policy paper is. This is basically titled Greening Pakistan's Special Economic Zones and Technical Roadmap and Policy Lessons, particularly from China. But yeah, before again highlighting anything, it has both Pakistani as well as Chinese individuals as its authors, especially led by two researchers, Aisha and Arfa at STPI. And from the Chinese end, we have Dr. Ishan Sun, who has contributed a special chapter on what the sustainability governance of Chinese SEZs, green SEZs looks like, and how they need, what are some of the lessons that we actually can have for Pakistan as well. So I fully understand that a lot of it might not be again directly visible from the very back end. So let me just sort of very quickly give you of what the conceptual framework of the study looks like and what are some of the very key outcomes that we're actually envisioning. So for the first and the foremost, the report sort of provides a very in-depth analysis of opportunities that exist for the green special economic zones within the CPEC, and also highlights a lot on what some of the challenges are and providing sort of a strategic roadmap based on a lot the ecosystem that exists in Pakistan, looking at its different policy fronts. So that's one of the very key angles. And secondly, it also sort of touched upon the evolution of how China's green special economic zones, they operate, what have been some of the very important lessons. Again, definitely fully understanding that what worked in China, we're not sort of recommending anyone that it's definitely going to work in Pakistan. The policy solutions, we're very strong on in that. They need to be a lot local. They work when they're local, but yeah, still based on some of the very success stories of the green SEZs, the green industrial parks in China. What are some of the very key lessons as well? So it touches upon 5 different principles. Firstly, it is strong regulations and governance that exist in Pakistan. So providing a historical framework ranging from the SEZ Act that started way back to the recent developments around the electricity structure that happened just recently, and how these frameworks shape the operational environment for the integration, particularly of renewable energy and low carbon development. Talking about not just again the renewable energy, it's also about the other climate tech technologies as well, talking about the electric vehicles, talking about other climate smart tech agriculture products as well. So what opportunities do exist for the relocation or the localization of these technologies and sustainable practices within the SEZs? At the same time, it looks at the economic feasibility. What is the current investment and economic landscape in Pakistan, including the domestic and foreign investments that exist, and how can the private sector actually play a very enabling role on those? I have already touched upon the point around the lessons from global best practices. But yeah, it does has two special chapters going into for the renewable energy localization, for the renewable energy supply chain localization, and what are the sort of again cost and benefits. Just to sort of give, I mean, the point here is that the localization might not be, again, we'll let the findings from the report decide, but it might not be again the exact economic, does it make sense, or does the because the imports coming from China, we all understand that are not really that expensive, would we be able to make those cost targets here as well? And definitely coming to some very strong policy recommendations for SEZ's development in Pakistan. So this is again a very quick sort of a landscape of what the SEZ development historical flow in Pakistan look like with the SEZ act that was passed in 2012, and that sort of provides very comprehensive legal and a governance framework enabling both federal and provincial governments to establish these SEZs through various models, including the PPPs as well. But at the very time when SEZ Act 2012 was passed, the SEZs were sort of placed outside the customs territory, so domestic buyers had to pay the import duties, they had to pay the taxes on goods made inside these zones as well. So it sort of initially limited the what we say attractiveness to SEZs to the local and foreign investors. But again, later that was amended in 2015 to sort of again bring the SEZs within the customs territory of Pakistan. And that was also the year when the SEZs within the CPEC were also sort of introduced. I won't be definitely going into it, but since then there have been a lot of developments, especially looking at the one-stop service bill that was presented, looking at different phases when different SEZs were notified as well as they were approved. And even if you look at 2025, there have been, I mean, it's all clear that there is a strong appetite to sort of make it work. I mean, definitely Dr. Arfa is here. This is all happening within the kind leadership and the lead role of the Board of Investment. But just recently, even in 2025, there has been the latest development on electric supply chain mechanisms overhaul, land lease policy and industrial zone surveys that are happening, and just I believe not happening, that have been done. Even Dr. Arfa highlighted the same in the previous meeting that she sort of joined as well. There have been a lot of positive announcements happening around these SEZs, especially the Chief Minister of Sindh also announced the Beji SEZ and how it can actually lead to employment increase of up to almost 100,000 jobs, and how the CPEC 2.0 is actually going to play a very important role. Same goes for some of the very important announcement around the Karachi Industrial Park development, district level economic zones. Same, a lot of important announcements coming in from the Sindh end as well. So you can sort of see all of these developments in much more detail within the document as well. That sort of defines a locational map of not just again the SEZs and the CPEC, but all of the SEZs in Pakistan. The ones that are highlighted in red are the 4 priority sector status SEZs. So you can see that a lot, again, not entirely uniformly, but the SEZs have been envisioned in some of the very key locations. And this location angle is, and how, which location, which area makes sense for a particular technology to be upscaled. That is also a very in-depth analysis that you will be seeing. But yeah, I won't be going into the China's development journey with green SEZs, but definitely just very quickly touching upon them that they have significantly contributed to the economy. Their SEZs, approximately as per the latest stats, accounting for 22% of country's GDP, 45% of its foreign direct investment, and around 60% of its total exports. And that has actually happened with some very constantly supporting policies as well as laws that the China government has actually introduced. A lot of it has been around the circular economy initiatives, low carbon industrial parks program. It has remained a very persistent component of China's 5-year plans as well. So just quickly looking, these are some of the key enablers that happened in China. And we have actually looked into 3 provincial case studies of SEZs into China, and we have sort of tried to summarize all of this into this single infographic that The key enablers in China has been mainly a very strong policy support and the governance infrastructure. And we'll also sort of try to align them a bit with what has happened in Pakistan and our challenges that exist. But again, a very strong national strategic alignment has been there. Technical support to these you call them green SEZs or green industrial parks, has been there. The public private partnerships, modernization of energy infrastructure. So I mean, this sort of a very coordinated approach was observed in most of the case studies that we studied for the China's end as well. But at the same time, even China's development was not without the challenges. They had to actually had received a lot of land challenges. There were some of the regulatory complexities that took a lot of time to sort of be materialized. There were some local governance constraints as well. Even I mean, one thing that we also have, so not perhaps Pakistan, but yeah, one thing that China, being such a big economy, has faced was of the overlapping mandates between different organizations leading the whole development process as well. And definitely it being one of the key component of the economic growth, they have been, even looking at the SCZs, there have been a lot of tensions between the economic growth and carbon abatement as well. So that's sort of an enabling structure which the Chinese SEZs have actually thought to be. And again, even as per the latest announcements made by Chinese President Xi Jinping, it has been made, this green industrial growth within the BRI region has been actually is one of the very strong, what we say, strategic component of China's new revised strategy of working within the BRI countries. What we do see is that we all fully understand that most of the investments within the CPEC framework have been declining in Pakistan technology. So that's why we actually believe that, I mean, strategically it needs to prioritize technology transfer through SEZs and sort of creating a potential synergy with China's green BRI focus as well. We'll be touching upon it, but just to sort of link it with where sort of what is the strategic role of these green SEZs within Pakistan. So there are three components that we have highlighted. The first one being that we all fully understand that the Pakistan, I mean, despite fully understanding that it's not a high emitting country, it's a low emitting country. But despite that, we actually have a lot of some very strong climate commitments. And let's not just link it only with the climate commitments, but how the reason we really need to integrate the green SEZs within Pakistan's industrial is also more of a business case because of the export compliance mechanisms that are sort of coming in. Pakistan is again has to eventually deal with the carbon border adjustment mechanism. That is, I mean, currently it's with EU, but it's growing. Even China sort of thinking around it. The other countries are thinking around it. The Australians are thinking around it. So the low carbon development, the reducing the overall emission intensity of any country, whether we're talking about the national grid or others, has to be actually play a very central role in the overall economic development that we have been talking about, that we have to talk about. So, I mean, greening of the SEZs or localization of low carbon tech within the Pakistan, that's actually going to play a very important role in the diplomatic as well as the climate imperative of Pakistan. And I think economic and market opportunities exists. I mean, there are two again perspectives to that. One is again of substituting the high cost imported technologies with some local manufacturing product. But again, I'll again be very discuss the same point that I mentioned, that it is not again necessary that the locally manufactured solar PVs are economically more viable than the local PVs currently being imported from China. So we have discussed different scenarios of dealing with it, but definitely Pakistan has the new energy vehicle policy now, and that actually places a very strong focus of localizing the value chain of the EVs within Pakistan as well. I believe that's very clear on that front. So it does offer some of the economic and a lot of economic and market opportunities as well. Lastly, but not the least, again talking about with the one of the very key themes is how this solar rush that we have been talking about, if it is to be made sustainable, if we have to look at the global changing governance of the energy supply chain, if you look at this angle, then advancing the clean energy development, and this it's going to come at the very top as well. But yeah, you can sort of look at a very detailed analysis. So at the same time, we also did sort of based upon the locational analysis, we also did some of the priority value chains for green SEZ's development. And the four key areas that we sort of discussed was the localization of solar PV manufacturing, smart grid integration and energy storage deployment, workforce development and technical training, and last, just like I mentioned, EV component manufacturing and the charging infrastructure expansion. And it has been, all of these have been discussed under a general broader framework, but with the two very key proponents, that is, what strategic opportunities would it offer to Pakistan? I mean, talking about the foreign exchange savings, trade deficit reductions, energy security through EV indigenization that we talked about, but at the same time, looking at the creation of employment, what green jobs would we sort of need, looking at the capital inflows as well. And at the same time, each of these case study have also been looked at the angle from the systematic challenges that exist, the skill gap that the country has, the other challenges on the policy front. We fully understand the policy target debate. We have been discussing it for a long of how inconsistent policies have sort of led to some of the challenges, how sort of some of the uh, how do we sort of frame it, that the changing economic and the regional turmoil in Pakistan has sort of led to some of the delays as well. But one of the very important points that has been discussed is around the grid, how to sort of sustainably power these SEZs. That's going to be of extremely important. So yeah, just to sort of, I mean, the opportunities have been discussed, but if you sort of frame the challenges in green SEZs in Pakistan, that's going to come. And perhaps one of the discussion points for today's debate could be this: how do we actually address these main 7 challenges? That is, how do we make the institutional coordination a lot better? It has fully understanding less, like I mentioned, some of the developments that have been recently happening. There is a lot of progress on this end. But we also have touched upon the recent fragmented tax systems, and but at the same time, this also touches upon the fact that we all fully understand that Pakistan is under an International Monetary Fund, IMF. It's going under an IMF program. And we also had the recent debates in 2024 on how all of the incentives that were given to the green SEZs, how they have been slightly impacted as well. Infrastructure energy deficiency, one of the very key pertinent challenges. It's again not just for the these SEZs, but that has been a challenge generally wise, but specifically for these industries. Then there is lack of regulatory autonomy, absence of accountability mechanisms, limited access to limited green finance access. And one of the very reasons that whenever we sort of decided, even for this dialogue, to bring in some of the Chinese experts, they are with us online, but the reason that a lot of the Chinese themselves needs to be present physically in this in these halls, in these dialogues. But yeah, we fully understand that the security issues that goes on in Pakistan that have led to a lot of challenges within the country as well. So once the way we actually look at it, and perhaps that's where I'll be sort of closing a bit shortly as well, that for the enabling components, we actually really need to look into policy design and the implementation side of the thing, how we can actually sort of support the infrastructure development, site selection and feasibility studies, technological expertise and capacity building, the financial instruments that we'll be talking about, and how do we actually address the security concerns that could, particularly when we're talking in relation to the green SEZs in Pakistan. I won't be presenting the recommendations over here, but generally what we have discussed is some of the reforms around the policy and institutional level, looking at the one window facilitation, one window stop, and how those needs to be sort of expedited. We have looked into infrastructure and utility readiness and preparedness angles, and how does the role of different governance structure of SEZs in Pakistan, how that can actually be sort of enabled to play the most effective role. We have also developed sort of a roadmap on the site selection and strategic planning, technology skills and innovation side as well. Green finance and investment mobilization, that has been the key discussion areas of the recent debate that we just recently did. The last is a very effective stakeholder engagement planning, if this is to be sort of uh, conducted in a short manner. So I believe I have definitely taken more than 10 minutes, which wasn't initially intended. But this was to sort of set a very, I mean, scene with, will definitely be sort of giving you its key recommendations that have been coming out and the whole report, hopefully by the next week. But this sets perhaps the tone for the discussion. And with this, I'll be coming to Ms. Zainab Babar. Zainab Babar will be moderating a next session on the renewable energy and SEZs, industrial growth under the CPEC. So Zainab, with this, over to you. And thank you so much, everyone, for my thank you.
Thank you, Ved. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. So, as Ubaid have mentioned already, that since morning we have discussed a broad spectrum of issues related to the energy transition, from emerging challenges to the strategic opportunities that are arising, the case of great solar rush in Pakistan, and the evolving role of private sector in the green energy transition. So, building on that momentum, in this session, what our focus will be on how SEZs can not only become the industrial clusters, but an ecosystem for low carbon development and innovation. So with this, I'll be requesting Dr. Arfa for opening remarks for the panel discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Zainab, and very grateful to give me this opportunity to share my views on this very important topic with very interesting people around, very interesting panelists, Hassan Daud Batsab, an old colleague and friend, and others as well. It's a delight to hear what was just said in this presentation. What an important topic that you have touched upon. A few comments. Number one, since it is very, very important, that the report is very important. So before you roll it out next week, kindly do share it with BOI for some comments, because I can still see, despite my earlier comments, I can still see a few problems with the facts, right? So we would be very happy to sit with you and discuss and just suggest a few corrections.
Sure, we'll be sharing that.
And while you talked about the list of challenges, one very important thing that you skipped is lack of awareness. No, there is a huge gap in awareness. Go to any policymakers and just see how many of them understand this concept of green economy, of carbon credits, of climate change, and go to any developer of SCZ in Pakistan. Whatever SCZ you select, we have 54 SCZs, 20 out of them are operative. Go to any one of them and then get back to me and tell me how many of those developers or SCZ managers, they know the concept of green SCZs. Probably I wouldn't say put a number on that, but the result won't definitely be very encouraging for you. So lack of awareness is very important, a very glaring challenge. We all need to address that. And that's why I said it's a delight to hear what you're doing. Coming to the panel that and they are obviously going to discuss and they'll go into they'll go deeper into this topic. I would just suggest the audience to think about how the globe is moving now. The global north and global south dynamics are changed, and now the focus is more on south-south cooperation. That's one thing. And moving towards green economy is the other thing. So after COP29, where are we standing? Which emission? Emission 1, emission 2, emission 3, and we probably fit into emission 3. So how ready are we for emission 3? And if we are not ready, few years down the line, whatever we produce today will not be bought by any international actor. We cannot become part of global value chain without being part of of a green economy. We need to understand this point. So from this global scenario, I will quickly say a few words about Pakistan. In Pakistan, we are into premature deindustrialization. Yesterday, Hassan Daud Bhatt Saab and myself, we were together in another event, and there, a very senior colleague of both of us, he said that no, this is wrong. Pakistan is not into premature deindustrialization. I could not go into an argument with him at that point in time, but I still hold my view that Pakistan is in premature deindustrialization. We have SCGs. SCG is the model. SCG is the tool for industrialization. The model is time tested in China, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Bangladesh, and many countries across the globe. And let me share my personal experience with you. In countries like US, I served as commercial counselor in Germany. I worked on US-China relations, trade relations as well. And I have visited economic zones or special zones. They're not called special economic zones, but the concept is the same, that you provide centers of excellence for economic development. The concept is very much there in USA. The concept is very much there in Germany and Europe. But China is labeled as a pioneer for this concept. They started off in 1980 with 4 pilot SCGs or zones, and today they have hundreds and thousands of SCGs, public sector, private sector, public private sector, multi-sector, sectoral, single sector, and a number of incentives which are given to them. In Pakistan, this tool, as given in the report, is under the regulatory regulation and SCG Act 2012. However, the results, I admit and I confess that the results are not glaringly good. We are working towards that. BOI is the custodian of all these SCGs across Pakistan, so I have no choice but to confess and admit we have done an extensive survey of all SCGs across Pakistan. We have updated all the data. We have taken quite a few new steps, and we are expecting very good results. And definitely this report will be of great help to us, and we'll be formulating a few policies and initiatives towards making our SCGs green. So making these SCGs green will also reduce our transaction cost. And without reducing the transaction cost, we cannot do industrialization. So I will just conclude by saying we need to go green, reduce our transaction cost, in order to make our SCGs operational and in order to become part of the global value chain and to keep up with the pace, the global pace of zero net carbon policy. Thank you. Over to the eminent panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Ifa. Thank you. It's wonderful that you highlighted the changing global scenario and the increasing importance of the South-South cooperation. And I strongly agree that there is a lack of awareness regarding the new evolving carbon credits or other stuff related to energy transition. So there is definitely a need to build the capacity around this. So with this, I'll be starting the panel discussion. Our first speaker will be Dr. Hassan Daud Bhatt. Sir, you have been working extensively with both Pakistani and Chinese stakeholders. So in your experience, how do you see the strategic role of SEZs evolving under CPEC, particularly in integrating renewable energy to enhance the industrial competitiveness? Thank you, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a disclaimer to make to the audience. I'm only in this panel for gender balance. The experts are right and left because, when you have Maha, Dr. Irfa Iqbal, Hania, I've just heard Hania a week back at a conference. She spoke brilliantly well. So I think just keep me at that level of keeping the gender balance on that. I had written a scripted speech for my introductory remarks, but I'll highlight few facts based on what you have perhaps, I won't say miss, but I think that's one factor that you need to also go deeper. Having one window, creating enabling environment, regulatory frameworks, we've been hearing this for almost 10 years now, almost a decade. And the good thing was CPEC is that when CPEC came, we realized that how good or bad we were in terms of, manifestation of some of the framework that was established initially. In 2016, when we went, and Dr. Irfa was everywhere when we were working on industrial cooperation framework. So in that framework, when we went, we went with 35 SCCs. So Chinese told us, please have one and start with one, keep it as center of excellence because your capacity is not as much as you think you are. और मैं हमेशा से बात कहता है, we have a foreign speakers who will speak in English. I have always been saying to everyone in Board of Investment, even when I was in Board of Investment, to my subordinates, to my colleagues, that whatever claim that we make, whether we make fifth largest salt or third largest milk or dairy product, livestock, be the best of the world human resource, there will always be scrutiny of that. And when you scrutinize it deeper, I think some of our claims are overestimated. So as far as your report is concerned, brilliant work. I'm sure you'll share it with all of us so that we can give our opinion. But I think we need to go deeper than where we are now in terms of our research analysis. Why I say deeper? Because the things that you have highlighted, the challenges, everyone knows about it. Remember, any investor because I represent Chinese energy investors here right now. Any investor who invests in your country, whether it's from China or anywhere in the world, will do the scrutiny of your natural endowment. आपके पास कितना तेल है, कितना पानी है, कितना salt है, they will do that scrutiny. What they need is an enabling environment, that pull factor, which makes you better than perhaps some of the countries. But I just want to highlight some important facts. And then I'll build my case for what I'm saying about the green SCCs, because sometimes I think sustainability, AI, these are now becoming buzzword. Everyone wants to speak about it. But as Dr. Irfa rightly said, whether do we have the capacity, especially in private sectors who are the developers of SCCs? How many of you would know that Dabiji is being developed by a developer who comes from Balochistan? And he's all his life he's been building roads. So whether they have the capacity to build a special economic zone, which is a center of excellence, I'm not too sure. So by 2050, there'll be over 250 million tons of solar panel which will be out of use. And in China, there will be around 22 million tons of solar panel which will be out of use. So like plastic, are we moving that way? Is that the direction we are having? China knows the answer. And when we say the green SCCs, green SCC does not mean that you have a solar plant installation or manufacturing factory led there and few solar panels and the energy is coming through that. The most important aspect going forward from here, remember, whenever we plan for future, it has to have the push of history. So like plastic, we need to understand what green SCC is supposed to be. So that green SCC has to have a recycling plant. In China, the cluster that they are creating and they created this in Malaysia and Vietnam because Malaysians and Vietnamese thought that perhaps they would have Chinese investment coming to their country and then they can export it to US. But then, US were equally smart. They put levies on those solar panels also. So when they constructed these clusters in China, the first thing that they did was to have a recycling plant around that. And that recycling and technology, I think we also have to bring as we bring Chinese EVs, as we bring Chinese solar manufacturing, as we have the rooftop solarization initiative, as to say, or the other gives different slogans. The other thing that I would like to have is that we do not have to reinvent the wheel. Just follow Vietnamese model. Take any model. Take Vietnamese model, take Malaysian model, or take Chinese model, and just embrace it as much as you can within your capacity. Can you do that? I'm not too sure, because we make tall claims of embracing, bringing in Chinese technologies and investors and everything, but then I think on the on the context of green industrial development and second phase of, and I can tell you, and I'm not being her colleague, I know the great work that she's doing, because every time the Chinese have a problem, they reach out to me or to her for solving some of the, so we meet with each other. I think in terms of China, I think the greatest initiative that we should work on and look at more than Belt and Road Initiative is the Global Development Initiative. Especially when we talk of greening of anything or sustainable development of anything. I think that gives clear guidelines of how China will develop going forward. And many of my colleagues do not agree to me. I think in terms of tariff war also, two countries which were very well prepared, one was China and the other one was India, because they've been preparing for first tenure of Trump. So even in the context of solarization and taking the lead, I think NDRC also announced its recycling plan, and it included green SEZ. So if you have not done research in your literature review of NDRC green plan or NDRC recycling plan, please have a, because NDRC is the mother institution as far as Belt and Road or CPEC is concerned. That's our, also I think President Xi has clearly articulated his plan of going forward. And that's very important for us. I think when he said that we work on smart yet green projects. So they're not going to go for mega project. They're not going to go for coal-based project. So should we abandon the great wealth of coal that we have, or should we explore and do R&D in terms of providing cheap energy through that, maybe coal to gasification or some other form of, I think I leave it to all the great thinkers who are here in SGPI and elsewhere to see how we can use the natural endowment that we have. And now, of course, de-risk our future challenges in terms of exporting our products. So last point that I want to just highlight, I think just go to Inner Mongolia for light. Just go to Inner, because when I look at Inner Mongolia and Balochistan, there are a lot of similarities between them. Large landmass available, wind there, livestock and other things that I think the best green SEZ that we should study is in Mongolia. And I think you should look, you don't look at these SEZs in big urban centers like Shenzhen and Tianjin. I think you should look at that also. And my last point that I want to highlight is that there were few things that in your challenges of the Chinese development model, you highlighted one fact of overlapping mandate. I think in China, people are clear what their mandate is, and they never overlap in terms of, I mean, there's a huge bureaucracy there. There are challenges of bureaucracy, but they never overlap in terms of each other's work. Secondly, which you have highlighted as a challenge, I think is the biggest strength that China has, is the competition between cities and districts and provinces and management, cities management, in terms of going green. I think that is, हमारे यहाँ तो फिर 18th Amendment भी समझ नहीं आती ना लोगों को, बाकी चीजें तो बात की बात कर कि how beneficial that the main cause towards 18th Amendment, besides political reason, was also to create competition between provinces to make biggest benefit of the natural endowment. We did not. So I think now we should, I've been saying this, Dr. Irfan does not agree to me, but I've always been saying this, and I will say it again and end it at here. Give us one special economic zone, which is green, blue, red, orange, I don't care, but one economic zone. Why? Because when in 2013 we were working on the energy framework, we had done 3 analysis. There was low growth, medium growth, and high growth analysis. And we were very optimistic that we will achieve medium growth. And therefore, our energy plants, all investment in energy was based around that. But today, all investors in energy sectors are being scrutinized. The first thing that they should scrutinize is the policy that was given by the government of Pakistan for attracting investment coming to Pakistan. So ये नहीं हो सकता कि 5 साल या 10 साल बाद फिर हम जलील हो रहे हो investment करने के बाद. So we have to be very diligent in what we prepare. God has gifted us with the talent of policy articulation, but while he was granting us this great luxury of policy articulation, he took away the strength of implementation of those policies. So I think we live in this challenge. My request to government would be, to whatever policies she make and the government makes, please keep it for at least 30 years. Have the opposition and all stakeholders in that, and build the capacity of private sector in development of SEZ. Otherwise, after 10 years, we'll again be talking here, sitting here in this good environment and talking about similar challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Your points are very well noted, and I completely agree that we definitely need to dive deeper to understand the pull factor for the Chinese investors. So with this, I'll be moving to our next expert, Ms. Hania. Hania, I would like to know your insights and perspective that given the global trends towards green industrialization, how can financial and regulatory frameworks be structured to make Pakistan's SEZs under CPEC attractive for investments in localized solar PV, battery storage, and related manufacturing sectors? Over to you.
Thank you, Zainab. And Dr. Hassan, you may be saying that you're here for gender balance, but like it gives me a lot of pleasure to be on a panel which has such heavy participation by female experts, and I think it's an honor to be here. So having said that, to your question, Zainab, I think when we're talking about manufacturing facilities or building manufacturing for solar PV or battery storage or clean energy technologies, it must be acknowledged that this is a very competitive field where China dominates almost 70% of the global manufacturing that is happening around these fields. And it is always going to come to the pricing point and competition in the market. Are we able to offer the same pricing point as China when it comes to solar panels or battery storage? I really do not think that. So we have to be practical, and we have to realize that there may be other avenues where we can focus instead. So when we're talking about solar PV systems or battery storage systems, there's a balance of systems which accounts for almost 60 to 70% of the project cost. By balance of system, I mean the assembling facilities, racking and tracking systems, your electrical components, your construction related activities, testing, operations, all of this. So that right now, because panels are so cheap, in China is such an advantage of almost every country in the world when it comes to manufacturing, your balance of systems has become a more heavily weighted cost component in the total project cost. So this is billions of dollars worth of investment that we can perhaps tap into. And so yeah, unless we're able to offer the same pricing point as China, or we have the same competitive advantage, which it may take a while for us to get there. That's basically what I'm saying. It's good to initiate research and development in these things, but we have to be practical. We have a very fast and we are rapidly moving solar rapidly moving solar market in the country. It is expanding at the rate of, I think, 300 megawatts a month. So we have to capitalize on things that we can. Manufacturing, it will take a while for us to get there. So perhaps we leave that competitive advantage to China and focus on other things instead. Now, having said that, the recent trade war between China and the US, that could be an avenue or an opportunity for us. So countries where, which benefited from technology transfer and manufacturing facilities set up by China, such as Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, for solar PV manufacturing, these have sort of been priced out of markets because of US-based tariffs. it was the same way, things happened for them. The US and EU placed tariffs on China. China moved manufacturing facilities to Southeast Asia. Now Southeast Asian economies also face tariffs. There's an opportunity for markets like us where the tariffs are lower. But I think we need to understand that we need to diversify our export markets as well. Just relying on the US will not, cut it out for us. So maybe focusing inwards, because we have a burgeoning solar market as well. So maybe focusing inwards, enhancing our domestic, domestic demand, domestic supply chains, or focusing on economies which are, non-US economies for export destinations. That could work out for us. And maybe we could also we could also initiate manufacturing industries when it comes to clean energy technologies. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. You very rightly highlighted that the ongoing trade war is an opportunity for Pakistan to tap into. With this, I'll be moving towards our next speaker for today. That is Dr. Ijian Sen. He's the Associate Professor in International Development at University of Bath. Dr. Ijian, my question to you would be, drawing from China's experience in developing green SEZs, what best practices could Pakistan adopt to ensure that CPEC's SEZs become hub for low carbon industrial growth while promoting sustainable development and green manufacturing? Over to you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind invitation of SDPI. I'm really pleased to join this conversation with many distinguished speakers. I really hope that I can join in person, but I only got invitation a few weeks before this event, which is quite difficult for me to arrange a trip from the UK to Pakistan. But hopefully next time I can be in the room to have interactions with many colleagues. And so I'm a scholar of public policy and governance. So I think from a governance perspective, I'd like to highlight, I think, some key insights that we can draw from experiences of China, but also many other developing countries on the special economic zone as in the past, as mentioned by some of the speakers. I think I want to highlight three things here. The first thing is to think about why we need and we want SEZ, and especially in this case, the Green Special Economic Zone. I think from a public policy perspective, it's really to think about what are the problems that we want to solve. So from this problem-solving perspective, as Dr. Arfa mentioned early on, I think it's really to think about the kind of win-win solutions to achieve both industrialization for countries like Pakistan, but at the same time, green development, which is really important and urgently needed in the face of our climate crisis. And this means also we have to, for countries who wants to develop green special economic zone, you have to think about what are the kind of outcomes you want to achieve. I think that requires you to design very carefully your planning. So in terms of what technologies, what industries that you really want to, in order to benefit the country, but also even I think in a very specific context, think about where you want to have this special economic zone. I think other speakers also mentioned about different places, even in the case of China, I think across regions, cities, there are huge variations. I think for different local jurisdictions to design their special economic zone, they have to take this into account. So I think that links to my, I think, second point, to think about this long-term strategy. So from a strategic point of view, if you want to design a special economic zone, especially in the case of green special economic zone, you need to have this long-term view, but at the same time also, I think, have some flexibility. I think China's model is always a debate about whether there's a model of development of China, but I think the least that we can learn from China is this model of learning by doing. So always adapting to the changing circumstances, and also I think the changing local context. I think this would, I would think push us to think about what's the agency of key stakeholders in Pakistan, and what are the motivations, or how we can incentivize different actors to work together in order to achieve that goal, if we agree that we want to use green special economic zone to achieve both industrialization and green development. And finally, I think if we have a good strategy and a long-term plan, and then I think the efforts should be on really kind of coordination of different stakeholders, and then mobilize all the resources towards that goal. So as long as we know what are the goals, what are the targets that we want to achieve, I think that then the challenge would be like how to really implement your plan. So I think that requires a very careful design of kind of engagement strategies, especially among different stakeholders, and then in order to ensure that we can all work together and find common interests. So it's easy saying, but then doing. So I think really more practices and more, I think, efforts needs to be made on the ground. So I think I'm very pleased to see the work SDPI is doing. I think really to push the discussions on the green special economic zone. And this is already, I think, in the agenda, at least for some key stakeholders. I think the next step is really to start to take actions. I think we need to move from kind of policies, discussions, planning to concrete actions. I think as long as we can start taking actions, I think more progress can be made. So I will leave here. I hope we'll have more conversation afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ian. Your points are very well noted that we definitely need a long-term strategy for the development of green SECs. I'll be now moving towards our next expert, Ms. Maha Kamal. Ms. Maha, I would like to know that in your viewpoint, how critical is the integration of renewable energy into SECs for enhancing Pakistan's industrial growth and global competitiveness under the CPEC 2.0 framework is? Over to you.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here with these distinguished panelists. And honestly, it feels like as a final speaker, I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. Already a lot has been said. So I'm just going to build upon many of the arguments that were put forth earlier. So the first point is that we really need to view these special economic zones not just as these industrial zones, but as testing grounds for a greener, sustainable industrial policy. So that's number one. And when it comes to that, renewable energy is no longer an add-on that you can think of, but it is really the strategic economic enabler. Why do I say that? So building on a lot of what has been earlier said, at this point, when we think of making our overall policy greener, we know that now there are very stringent green export standards. And at the heart of it, of course, is something that was mentioned earlier. It's, of course, the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, the CBAM. And of course, oncoming, building on that are also the global ESG standards that are becoming stringent. So we know that if we have low carbon exports, we will definitely have a competitive edge. And the fact that this is then an opportunity when we have these ongoing special economic zones, then we can see them as really these pilots that we can use to make sure that we are building on that and that we're keeping up with the green export standards. So that's number one. Number two is, of course, it is also a transformative opportunity to really restructure energy systems as we know it. And as, of course, women in energy, I will have to say that we have historically really excluded women in the energy process, and marginalized communities have also always been sidelined, right? And so when we think of economic zones like Dhabaji, for example, we could pilot these democratic energy access systems. We can give community ownership. And the fact that, as Hassan Daud Saab mentioned, when we have the context, when people who are at the forefront of that zone, we build their capacity, give them that community ownership, ownership to ensure that we not only have sustainability in the in terms of the climate sense, but we also have long-term sustainability as we know it. So that's absolutely important. And when we have that community ownership, when we have that transparency and accountability, it is really going to shape the way we can conceive and design these special economic zones. And of course, part of that is then what are we aiming for, right? And so I see it as 5 different aspects that we need to focus on. We're going to make sure that we have cost competitiveness. So again, renewable energy as at the heart of it. At the moment, unfortunately, we still have one of the highest electricity tariffs in the region. So we need to really move away from that and ensure that we have that cost competitiveness when we're moving to microgrids. We're decentralizing those energy systems to ensure, again, that cost competitiveness. So that's number 1. Number 2, we have to think about the reliability and resilience, right? And that's really, again, building on that energy access. How are we going to ensure that we have that reliability really built in? So that's number 2. Number 3 is, of course, attracting that green FDI. And of course, it's linked to my earlier point about ensuring that our exports are, that supply chain is really green. Number 4 is, of course, having that policy coherence under CPEC. And when we're thinking about renewable energy, we're thinking about the circular economy, we're thinking about how we making it more innovative with more technology. We really need to have that policy coherence in there. And again, that links to what Hassan Saab was saying earlier about when we have long-term policy planning and long-term policy implementation, that really helps ensure that our long-term vision isn't compromised despite policy uncertainty that may otherwise hamper our progress. And lastly, but not least, all of this is linked to job creation, to ensuring our livelihoods are sustainable, and the overall development is sustainable. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maha, for sharing your insights about the global standards like CBAM and how to stay cost competitive in the global industry. So with this, I'll be moving towards the second round of questions. And I would like to ask Ms. Hania that from a financing perspective, what mechanisms such as concessional finance, risk guarantees, or blended finance could be most effective in enabling the localization of clean energy supply chain within Pakistan's SEC under CPEC 2.0?
Sure. So financing instruments like concessional finance, blended finance, like you know, whatever instrument that you look at, these instruments can are great for initial project development. That's what I think we need to realize, that concessional finance can only take a project forward in the initial stages. It's great for de-risking. It can greatly reduce how the risk perception of the project is. It can build investor confidence. It can take care of your feasibility stage, where feasibility studies need to be conducted, technical assistance is needed. That's the sort of thing that concessional finance can do for you. But when it comes to projects like special economic zones under a framework such as the CPEC, what we really need to bring in is private capital. We need to unlock investment in the country. That's what is basically needed. Concessional finance in the form of grants is not going to be, basically it's not going to be enough to carry the burden of the work that needs to be done. It can only get you through the initial stages. But in order to unlock investment, what we really need is institutional and policy frameworks that are sustainable and that really build investor confidence and sustain it. So for example, like Hassan Daud said earlier, what we really need is an enabling environment right now for Chinese investments to sustain in the country. We've seen with the CPEC, there's been a lot of issues when it comes to contractual obligations, upholding contracts, payment related issues, financial arrears in the system, security related concerns. So we really need to look at the barriers which are holding up investment in the country. I'm sure there's a lot of capital available out there that Pakistan could really tap into, but we need to look at the barriers that are preventing that from happening. And we've talked to a few investors, and they're greatly concerned about inputs such as high electricity costs, then the security environment, then land ownership related regulations, uncertainty around tax regulations, permitting problems. There's a lot of departments in loopholes that there's a lot of hurdles that these companies have to go through in order to register themselves and get approvals, NOCs from various departments, and the permitting process takes a very long while. So these are hurdles that are preventing investment from taking off right now in the country. Concessional finance can maybe give you the initial impetus to kick things off, but in order to sustain the momentum of investment, we really need to de-risk these investments in reality on the ground by looking at the barriers that are holding up these opportunities. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Hania. I cannot agree more to the point that you highlighted, that we need a sustainable institutional and policy framework. I believe this is the first and foremost thing that we need to have to attract investments. With this, I'll be moving towards our next expert, Dr. Hassan. Dr. Hassan, as we all know that the federal budget is due in next 1-2 months. So are there any budgetary reforms specific that can be included in the budget for the growth of SEZs?
We need to understand that any initiative that we undertake in a country or any country has a burden of profitability. So if you make these SEZs profitable, you would not need government's exchequer to be investing in these. And I think one of Dr. Irfa Iqbal's professor was Lin Yifu. And if you read Lin Yifu's book on structural economics, it clearly articulates two things. One is that you need to first understand the natural endowment or competitive advantage that you have. You need to understand that first. And then you have to have a flexible government to undertake the initiative. And the third point that comes out of all this is that as we speak, the government does not have enough money to support healthcare, education, what to talk of special economic zones. So what we need to do, I mean, should we leave it? No. What we need to do is promote A as a principle and have a national debate on public-private partnership. We need to have a national debate on this. It's not, for me, it's like a jargon, har koi bolta hai, but nobody is really understanding. If you go to provinces, the crisis is even bigger. Federal government, yes, we have a public-private partnership authority. How many public-private partnership projects they have brought, you can do your analysis and actually implemented them on ground. So, A, we need to identify what is our advantage. So, as I said, find the best special economic zone within CPEC, whether it's Dhabeji, whether it's say in Faisalabad, Rashakai, in GB. For me, I think GB has the biggest potential, but anyway. The second point that I want to answer and I build my case on the federal budget, because I would be, as a middle class person and a salaried person, I'm least interested whether they build SEs or not. I'm more interested that they lower taxes on my salary. So that's more important for me as we speak. But so let's keep the government out of this. Let's invite the private sector to undertake, because this is really, really profitable. Whether और मैं आपको बताऊं, एक अच्छा चल गया, if we run one and build one and it goes profitable, we are a community in business sense. We work on herd mentality. So if one goes well, you'll see them mushrooming across. Like I have a colleague from Air Force, and just look at National Science and Technology Parks. How many of them have mushroomed? This is based on profitability only, no other national agenda. So if you can do that, they will work. Remember, and you have a important task, and the most important task under this roof is of Dr. Irfa Iqbal. We are an over-regulated country. We even have regulations which are post 1930, pre 1930. Just imagine. If I give you the number count for setting up an industry and regulations that an industrial has to go, most of them would forget about industrialization in the country. That's why we are deindustrialization. So I think federal government, and more importantly, the provincial ADBs have to keep some money for this, because investment and special economic zone is not a federal subject, it's a provincial subject. As far as a post 18 amendment, investment is, of course, it has a pillar of federal government, but then the provincial government has a very, very critical role in terms of, like Rashakai, money flows from KPSMIC, Dabeji, money flows from the Sindh special economic zone. So I think the provincial government has to keep a good. For federal government, I can only request them to please support Board of Investment, keep that whole of government approach, and even if you don't want to put money because of certain IMF pressures and otherwise, please don't, but create that enabling environment. People should be talking about industrialization. I think Maha just spoke about, you spoke about industrialization. Do we have a policy which supports any particular industry in Pakistan? We do not have an industrial policy. So as long as we do not have an industrial policy in this country, we have the commerce strategy, we have the provincial policy, but we do not have. और जब भी आप इंडस्ट्री, मैं उर्दू में वो बात बोलता हूँ जो मैं नहीं चाहता कि हमारे बाहर के दोस्त सुने. जब भी हम इंडस्ट्री वो अलग, जब हम इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी की बात करते हैं तो हमारा जो क्रक्स होता है वो क्या होता है कि हम मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स और मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडस्ट्री को मर्ज कर दें, या उसको सेपरेट कर दें, या टीडैप के साथ क्या करें, या हम मतलब सिमिलर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस के साथ क्या करें. सो आई थिंक वी नीड अ रोबस्ट सस्टेनेबल 10 years, ये डिसाइड करें पॉलिटिशियंस, उसको for 10 years एक पॉलिसी इंप्लीमेंट करें, then the bureaucracy will implement that. We will support it as technocrats and all people sitting here, so that at least I know which industry to invest in. As we speak, I'm not sure, green, blue, which industry I should support. Whether I should become a trader or an industrialist based on regulation, regulatory reforms, initiative, I'm not sure about that. So I think we also need an industrial policy. So more than budget, I think we need an industrial policy for Pakistan.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Very well noted points that we definitely need to build an economic case of profitability for SEZs, and we need to definitely identify our comparative advantage. Before moving towards our next expert, Dr. Ijian, I would like to update that we will be having a Q&A session shortly. The online participants can write their questions in the Q&A box. So with this, Dr. Ijian, I would like to know that given your work on the SKN project, how do you assess the role of strong sustainability governance framework in driving successful green SEZs? Over to you.
Thank you. So for those who don't know our work, so the SKN project is it's a large research program that I'm leading here at University of Bath, and SDP is the partner of the project. So in this project, we are interested in basically the governance system in terms of institutions, rules, standards, norms that trying to govern sustainability of China's overseas investments. And of course, I think Pakistan is a very important case in our study. So I think what I'd like to share here is to some kind of general thoughts about what has been changed over the last few years in terms of China's policy to govern its overseas engagement. but at the same time to reflect on what are the opportunities here if we think about promoting green special economic zone in the case of CPEC. So basically, we all know that China has shifted its financing strategy in the second decade of the BRI. I think as some speakers mentioned earlier, China now really emphasizes this so-called small but beautiful projects, which really, I think, focusing on local benefits, whether it's about livelihoods provision, but also kind of environmental benefits, sustainability transition, to think about low carbon development. But this also means like the Chinese government wants to bring more kind of private investment, not just always through kind of government to government projects. And this also lead different stakeholders in host countries to think about what are the business opportunities, whether you can make a business case to attract more investment from China. But I think at the same time, in terms of kind of sustainability governance, especially from an environmental and social perspective, what we have seen is also the Chinese government really trying to emphasize this so-called Green Belt and Road Initiative, or integrating green development into its overseas strategies. There have been also policy change to encourage Chinese companies to apply higher standards, including Chinese and international standards for their overseas practices. And now also with Chinese companies to be required to disclose their ESG data. This also put a lot of pressure on Chinese companies on their sustainability reporting for their overseas operations. However, this is all, I think, at the policy level. So I think from a governance perspective, this is mainly in kind of the design stage, the policy design stage. I think what we need to see more is really actually the changes on the ground, which means we need to change practices of different actors. So here, what I think, and also the research that I've been doing with my team, really suggests that there is a strong, I think, opportunities for Pakistan and China to really work together to develop stronger governance framework for the sustainability of Chinese engagement in Pakistan, especially in the case of CPEC 2.0. So basically, in a new era of China-Pakistan economic corridor, to really to think about different pillars of sustainability or sustainable development and how to really pursue synergies between environmental, social, and economic sustainability. I think what we need to more, in addition to what has been said by other speakers, for example, to have a very clear like long-term strategy, industrial policies, is also to think about this kind of linkages between environmental and social sustainability, and how to involve, for example, key stakeholders, local communities, those especially marginalized actors who can be affected by different projects in the project design and implementation. This also connects to the very important topic of just transition, to think about how we can really benefit if we want to use green special economic zone as a means to support long-term sustainable development in the countries, and how this can really benefit people in the country. So I see a lot of opportunities every time I go to Pakistan and talk to different people. I think people really welcome Chinese investment, and also see this is big opportunities for country for country like Pakistan to pursue a more sustainable future. I think the question is really how we can find a way, design a good mechanism for different actors to work together, and we can also deliberate what kind of future we want, and then also design and implement the policies that are going to be made. So hopefully, I think with this discussion now on the kind of what kind of green special economic zone that we want organized by SDPI, I think we can move forward to have, I think, more concrete actions. So I look forward to working with also different experts and stakeholders and to really continue this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jian. It seems an exciting idea of Pakistan and China working together to develop a governance framework under CPEC. So with this, I'll be moving towards our next expert, Ms. Maha. Ms. Maha, I would like to know that given Pakistan's ongoing challenges with high energy costs and unreliable supply, how can SEZs embedded with decentralized clean energy systems can reshape the future of sustainable industrialization in the country? Over to you.
Thank you, Sanab. So, just to build on a lot of what has been said earlier, we really need that policy continuity and that sustainable and industrial policy guiding how we're going to design our special economic zones. So, there are 4 points I would like to make in that regard. Number one is that we really need to ensure that we have green energy as a center, and then we also have audits that are conducted that are green energy audits. So that would be really essential, especially when it comes to distributed renewable energy systems and integrating renewable energy in our special economic zones. Then we really need to have our green SEZ models and have them piloted. For example, this could be in Thabachi, this could be in Rashikai. So wherever there is most potential, that analysis will need to be done, but that those green SEZ models then need to be replicated if the pilot is successful. Number three is that we really need to incentivize industries via net metering, have wheeling frameworks embedded, have renewable energy financing. That's, of course, very, very central to having renewable energy integrated. And of course, public-private partnerships could be explored further to kind of build on this. And lastly, and that's absolutely essential, is that we have that cross-sectoral collaboration, because this is one of those areas which is not just sustainable industrial policy needs inputs from across different ministries. So, for example, Ministry of Climate will need to play a central role, Ministry of Energy. So it really needs that cross-sector collaboration across and building that policy. So thank you.
Thank you, Maha. You very rightly highlighted that we definitely need to conduct the energy audits to see where we are standing at the moment, and then define the discourse that we'll be moving forward with. And definitely public-private partnerships are emerging as a very key instrument in moving towards the green transition overall. So now I'll be taking some questions from our audience. Please, yes, please. Okay, so let me just first introduce an expert. We have Dr. Jamal Khan with us today. Dr. Jamal is from Institute of International Studies, and his area of research is carbon border adjustment mechanism and its impact on developing countries. So, Dr. Jamal, would you like to share some insights on this? Over to you.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I'm very grateful to be with Dr. Irfa Iqbal and other panelists. So I am here on for fieldwork research on CPEC. So with this discussion, I want to add some points like in terms of GVC, because I am also looking for like the impacts of deep trade agreements on GVC participation in the context of China. So in that case, like in CPEC 1, it was like more about infrastructural development or hard connectivity. But when it comes to CPEC 2.0, the focus is more on soft connectivity, like how much emphasis we are putting into behind the border measures. Like in case of in our chapter, which we are analyzing the impacts of WTO different provisions, there are nearly 52 provisions, out of which 38 are those which we call WTO X, and others which are under WTO framework, which are like 14 policy areas. So in the context of agreements like PTAs between North-North countries, developed countries, the average number of provisions or number of policy areas covered in those PTAs are like from 13 to 17. In other developed and developing countries, number of PTAs are 10 to 12, and in developing context, it is 8 to 10. But when it comes to Pakistan, the number of PTAs in the case of Pakistan, like we have different PTAs with China or Indonesia or other regional players, the number of PTAs are 4 to 6. So we have to emphasize those behind the border measures in our existing PTAs, or if we are going to smooth down the flow of, like if we want to integrate in GVCs, or we want to move in the value chains from low end to high end, our emphasis should be on to consider these behind the border measures. Then in terms of as you mentioned, like where we can seize opportunities in current tariff trade tensions between United States and China. Yes, of course, we have like we can also focus on like those regional restructurings like of global value chains, nearshoring, friendshoring. So where we can capitalize those trade industrial relocations from China to Pakistan so that China can circumvent those tariffs uh, in terms of its tensions with the US, and also there are also circumvention opportunities for Chinese industries in the context of CBAM, because EU CBAM, I'm also looking into the impact of WTO and climate regimes uh, on these developing countries and also their global cost effectiveness, how these trade or climate regimes like Article 3, they are impacting the global cost effectiveness of unilateral measures. Then there is another point like which model we should follow. As Dr. Hassan, he mentioned that which industries, green, brown, or where we should focus. Of course, like we have environmental Kuznets curve. The countries first their emphasis on more on economic development. Then at the later stages, they can move toward environmental impact. So we need to rebalance. Like in case of China, China has rebalanced its economic approach from export-oriented economy to both like consumption-based economy. So in terms of Chinese model or any other model,
Dr. Jamal, in the interest of time, I would request
this is
you
the
to-
last comment,
Yes,
please.
please.
Yeah, okay. So in case of Chinese model, I will quote Nobel laureate Robert Lucas. Like he said, simply advising a society to follow the Chinese or Korean model is a little like advising an aspiring basketball player to follow the Michael Jordan model. So our model should be indigenous rather than we should just imitate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal, for joining us today. Okay, so we'll take some questions and then we'll be moving toward the concluding of this session. Please let me know. Please. Sir. Can you please switch on your mic?
Yes, I have one question, or perhaps it's a comment, or whatever you think it is. Very good presentation. The conceptual framework that was shown over here, by large, it is covering everything. But one aspect which I think is missing, or that should be part of the conceptual framework, because one of the pillars should be the social and cultural factors. And primarily, another factor which I see is missing is the gender aspect, because this is an area where we are lacking. This is an area where we need a lot of attention. So gender dimension should be added in the research, and it should be an integral part, in fact, an important pillar of the conceptual framework.
I think it's a very good point. I just want to highlight one fact about CPEC, and many people do not know this. I think CPEC is the only initiative in our history which has actually transformed a Hindu majority area. So in terms of religious biases, in terms of gender biases, and in that area, Dr. Irfa has visited that when she was, doing her research across Pakistan. The women are actually running heavy loader trucks in Thar area. So I think it's a fantastic poster boy as far as, promoting Pakistan's good work. One other fact I want to highlight in terms of governance, because we keep highlighting our governance structure, but I think CPEC again has been one initiative which was able to attract around 28 billion US dollar in less than 3 years. And that was because the entire government was willing to work on that: bureaucracy, security, all agencies, the commercial counselor in China, the CPEC cell in China, and also here. So I think your aspect of gender and also
Social and cultural.
Social, I think, because when you go to areas like GB and otherwise, I think community participation is an exceptionally important aspect when you do you build a small plant there, you have to a fantastic hotel there, even Ramada, you have to have the community participation. So आपका point बड़ा valid है और please इसको include कीजिएगा sir report.
Thank you. Any more questions that we have? Okay, that's okay. So with this
She has a
Question here.
okay, please go ahead.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. I am Neha Ali, student of economics from Bahrain University. And insightful discussion by panelists. I think the major key takeaway here is we need to have long-term policies. And my question comes from pure wonder, as I'm just a student, that why don't we advocate for an independent authority that is independent of politics, of bureaucracy, and that makes sure that we can make long-term policies? And how exactly are we going to ensure the long-term policies? I think we need to think more creatively and innovatively in terms of governance and implementation in this regard. Thank you. That's my point.
Okay, Neha, first of all, we are all students, right? And one stops living when one stops being a student. Secondly, talking about, I mean, it's a very, very interesting statement that you have given. Why can't we have a body which has no political connections and can ensure a long-term policy? I don't think that's possible. We do have a political system in our country. We have a democracy. We have our parliament. We have our cabinet. So we can't have have an authority. Yes, we do plan to have authorities which at the implementation level, not at the policy level, but at the implementation level, yes, I agree with your point. And there are varying degrees of autonomy given to various implementing bodies. And but we have a problem with our accountability system as well. And this was one of the problems which was highlighted in the presentation in the very beginning. So we need to again have a policy by the people who are politically connected for accountability, monitoring, supervision of the implementing agencies. And that's how we can get the things done. As far as having the sustainable policies, yes, we do have this problem, and we all need to work hard towards this, that with one political government, the policies should not be changed, and the good projects should continue. I have a few examples of good projects that continued from one to another political government, but in general, I cannot defend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Afa. It was great to listen to the discussion, wonderful discussion that we had today. With this, I'll pass on the baton to Dr. Arfa for concluding this session. Over to you, Dr. Arfa.
Once again, thank you very much. I think very, very informative, interesting discussion, and this is a way forward to improve the level of awareness among different stakeholders. So one point that I would like to make, as Dr. Hassan said, a green special economic zone is not just an economic zone where we have green energy. It's a complete ecosystem which has to be green. Water treatment, waste treatment, green transport, green raw materials, so that, and many more. So that is a complete ecosystem, green ecosystem, which makes an SCZ a comprehensive green SCZ. That's one point, and I agree with Hanya, apologies, that we need to diversify our export destination. There's a formula which we need to follow. So what are the products that we have? Which are globally the countries, the destinations attracting most of the import of these products? And what is the percentage of Pakistan that we have in our exports of those products in those destinations? So we need to work out this formula, and we need to work towards that, and follow the flying geese model, by which there is relocation, sequential relocation of industry. When one country graduates, it becomes capital intensive, the labor intensive industries move out and are relocated to the other countries. So and Dr. Ishan, my dear friend, and he rightly said that we need to incentivize so that industrialization is connected with green economy. And when Maha mentioned about the stringent export standards now, so that makes me say that it's a war of struggle then. And that in itself becomes an incentive if you win that war of struggle of fulfilling those stringent export standards and do your industrialization, that you become part of the international market. At the end, I would just give two more comments. One, you talked about budget. Dr. Hassan replied it. I will just build up on that. In provinces, Rashtrakai in KP province, FIDMIC and PIDMIC, two developers in Punjab, Dhabaji, SCZ in Sindh, all the provincial governments are spending their bits on these SCZs. When it comes to the federal government, we are now following it up that to provide the infrastructure for amenities, federal government needs to dole out money, engage money in the allocate money in the budget for providing this infrastructure in PSDP. So yes, both the federal and the provincial governments, they are taking their bit on the financial side, and we are also working towards providing a conducive environment. Very shortly, you will be seeing a business facilitation center in Islamabad, the first pilot project where a number of ministries will be sitting will be physically sitting there, and also will be connected online with their counterparts in their respective ministries, so that the investors do not have to go from one place to another, and they get all that facilitation under one roof. And also the bulletin we are working on, we are also going to launch Asan Karobar Act pretty soon. So this is all that I have to say right now. I know the time is already lapsed. Thank you very much once again. Very grateful for this interactive session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arfa. With this, I'll be requesting Dr. Hassan. On a lighter note, as you mentioned that you're here only for gender balance. No, it's not the case. You're here to present the vote of thanks on behalf of SDPI as well. So please, for the whole day conference, over to you.
I just want to thank representing the management of SDPI. I want to thank Dr. Irfa Iqbal, Ms. Maha, Hania, and all of you, because all of you are champions of a green industrialization, which is now unavoidable, and it's imperative that we start thinking about it and sitting on these discussions. I know the challenge of post-lunch seminars, but thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I think most important and most sought after aspect of this entire discussion, more than what we spoke, would be your report. So I would earnestly request you, please share with us, because we can also build our research, share it with the Chinese, and then build. I also want to thank our colleague from China, because it's almost 7 o'clock there. His paths is dinner time.
He's from UK.
He's in England. So anyway, I'm not sure whether it's good morning or good afternoon there, but thank you very much for sparing your time. And whenever you come to Pakistan, we will treat you with green food. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was wonderful to have you all today with us. Thank you. Okay, please, tea will be served today here. Please join us for that.